the galactic shaman astrologers are meeting about the 12th house. And as we're meeting, Pluto is stationing and will stand still for about 4 days. So this is the perfect time to go deep into the underworld, the inner world, the unconscious, that which cannot be seen. And I'm not saying that Pluto has anything to do with the 12th house, but what's deep and hidden and may need to come to the surface is some kind of like a Plutonic energy. Now, the way I'm going to start is that in ancient astrology, Saturn finds its joy in the 12th house. And there are ancient mythical tales around Saturn and Pluto. They have a relationship. Saturn actually is given the responsibility of putting Pluto out into the outer realms of Tartarus. So Saturn and Pluto in the sky right now are as close as they're going to be for at least 30 years. So we have this very interesting relationship of Saturn's finding its joy in the 12th house, which is what we're going to talk about right now. Then the archetypal story around Saturn's responsibility, which is what Saturn does, to restrain Pluto and put him out into the unconscious realms, or Tartarus, the underworld. Now, according to some ancient texts from tablets in cuneiform, there is a story that Pluto actually used to orbit inside between Saturn and Jupiter. Now, this is what the story is. I don't know if it's true. And so the mythical story of Saturn taking Pluto and putting it out there may have been an astrological event, actually. So then what Saturn does is it is finding its joy in those unconscious realms, because it is the guardian and keeper of that Plutonic, deeper unconscious material where it cast Pluto out. So people may want to talk about that a little bit. When I think about the 12th house, what I was taught was that it's the womb place also. So Demetra taught me to look into the 12th house to see what you were bringing in through your ancestral line, through the womb place, that would be part of what you were bringing forward in the collective unconscious realm. So looking at that place it's before the ascendant, when you take your first breath. So it may also be from like the cosmic guides that you decided to take on like some karma, some cosmic equating or bringing justice or balancing the scales. So the other thing I think about that is it's not necessarily just your ancestral womb karma, but it might be something that you are taking on for the collective, okay? Then the other thing that I think about with the 12th house is that its traditional meaning is like the place of undoing. So if the first house is self, and the second house is self-worth or values or resources or finance, the 12th house is actually the place of undoing. So it is considered like the place of enemies or restraint, or even like demons, which become kind of guides through this journey. And Demetra, in her book, Finding Our Way Through the Dark, explains the Buddhist perspective is that those demonic kind of figures may actually be your spirit guides helping you on your journey. So they're kind of like the equivalent of the keepers of the threshold, like, you know, the dark unconscious places that we need to go through to evolve. So that's one way of seeing it. Traditionally, also, we kind of think of the 12th house as a place of incarceration, where you may have chosen a life of like leaving the world behind. And that could be in a hermitage, in an ashram, in a cave, in jail, in prison, also in institutions. So I think of my own mother's chart with a big 12th house, where she was the administrative assistant in a school district, where she was like hidden away in an office for 30 years. And that was her cell. That was like her incarceration. But it was also a way of her doing service. So the 12th house is a place that you have to make conscious. So by us focusing on it today, we're going to give you some ideas about how to bring consciousness to your 12th house. Whether you have planets there or not, doesn't matter. Everyone has 12th house stuff by transit or the rulership of that sign. So let's just jump right in. And I think that Britt is going to just go with it at this point and see where we go. Go ahead, Britt.
Yeah, I've been thinking about the 12th house as this place of, so for me, the demons would translate to the inner demons that I would struggle with, or one would struggle with. That to me, just in this modern time, makes the most sense. Although I do have an example of a friend that I can talk about in a second. So personally, my 12th house is ruled by, is occupied by Aquarius. There's nothing in it except for my lunar eclipse. I don't really know what that means. And so Saturn is in its dignity. Is that correct? Because, or well, Aquarius is dignified there because it's ruled by Saturn. My natal Saturn is in the 4th house in Gemini. You know, if I want to think about the hidden longing or desire, or the driving force, a driving force behind me was a longing to be different as a kid and to be free. I wanted to be unique. I didn't want to be cookie cutter. There's a drive to be free as well. Just so I don't know if that's, so I've also looked at my husband's chart. He's got Leo there, with nothing in, oh, his chart disappeared on me, with nothing in there. And his sun, which would be the ruler of Leo, is in the 6th in Aquarius. I would say, if I listened to his life and his deep longing, was a longing to be really loved. Not that he wasn't loved, but really loved, and maybe an unconscious longing to really be seen for his innovation. A longing to be seen for his innovation, the light of his unique person. So that's how I've sort of enjoyed looking at the 12th, in terms of the unconscious part, of the part that's not seen. You know, maybe I haven't embraced my uniqueness, or maybe that's been a lifelong journey to embrace the fact that there's only one of me, and that I do have unique talents that or maybe I don't acknowledge. There's also the piece of Saturn being in the 4th house. I did move across the country from my family, from my home. Saturn in the 4th, maybe that sort of describes the separation of that home wanting, and my mom always said, you know, you just wanted to be out of the house, you wanted to be away. So there's that. I do have a friend who has a packed 12th house. It's also ruled by Libra. She's got a retrograde Mercury there. She's got a Sun-Venus conjunction there, and a Sun-Venus-Jupiter conjunction there. And I do know that in her early childhood, she struggled with literal ghosts in the house that she grew up in. And she felt very isolated. She felt like she had a very isolated childhood, even though she had a large family. She was the eldest child. She felt like she had to be a parent to her younger children. She's felt very misunderstood by family, not embraced for her in her light, and struggled with that deeply. So those are the sorts of things that I've been looking at. The 12th is, I asked my mom about her pregnancy with me. She was away from home and she wanted her mother. So my parents had moved away from Seattle. They were living communally with a bunch of friends in Arizona. That's where I was born. My mother didn't particularly like this lifestyle. So it was a unique lifestyle to that time. And I think that I was a very fast birth. Like there's a story of them, rushing to the hospital and like dad coming in from parking the car and making it just on time, So I always associate, Aquarius with kind of lightning speed. I don't know. So these are the things that I've been pondering. But I do like that idea of that it being this background force that's sort of driving you. I don't know if that's accurate. That's just what I've been thinking about.
Okay, so do I need to recap there? I'm hoping that our viewers, which we have about like 100 to 150 viewers that watch our videos, that you're picking up keywords that were just given about the 12th house, one of them being ghosts. And the ghosts are kind of like those demons or spirit guides that when I talk to clients about the 12th house, they shut down their third eye because they could see these other non-ordinary beings. And I feel like the 8th house and the 12th house can figure to each other, but neither of them can figure to the ascendant. So that's another way to look at it. When we talked about the 8th house last conference, it does not configure to the ascendant, but the 12th house is like trying to see what's exactly behind you, like right behind you. It does not configure to the ascendant in such a way that it's totally blind. And sometimes the demons and those things are trying to get you to look through the other eye, the third eye. So not these eyes that can't see that realm, but the third eye, the non-ordinary seeing realm. That's another way I see that, okay? Go ahead, folks, keep going.
Hello, I'll speak. In terms of this deep psyche journey, something which came up on my radar today was the concept of if we have trauma, if we have memories and experiences, whether it's karmically or in this life, and it's all interwoven, it's not. I came across a quote by Freud, and it was basically, our mind can't keep track of all of the memories, but our body keeps everything. All of the score is held in our body. And as I was researching different like psychology depth kind of ideas on Google, I realized how much, like in me personally, how much I shut down the intuition of the body in terms of the messages that are coming through from my unconscious, which are held in the body. Like my 12th house is Virgo, so that might also be connected to that earthy groundedness. As if I can be grounded, then I can engage with that unconscious realm. But it's a choice that I have to make if I want to do it or not. And then I can find myself being flighty or trying to avoid it. So that was really something I was presented with today, was, you know, how to, and I think it's really connected to Pluto, actually. You just said that about Pluto stationing, because that's a long-term journey of that shamanic journey into the psyche. And yeah, you dive in without fear. And I was reflecting on Mercury now being in Scorpio, and just how that fear of, if you speak about these things that seem hidden, we can't control them. So you don't really know what will come out. So for me, that really sparks a fear of, you know, what would I say if I was to start to unravel more of that, what would come out. And so personally, I have no planets in Virgo in the 12th house, but I have Persephone and Mascarpone, I don't know how to say the other one, Persephone and her other, and Athena. And I tend to find that the 12th house is like the doorway on the ground that goes down into the underworld for me. So that's my entry point. And because it's a hidden space, because Persephone is naivety, I can often, well, not just that, but she can be, and I can often find myself being naively kind of hijacked by my own conscious choice in a way, but not conscious choice, by my own kind of karmic choice. So there's a fear of detail. Virgo is the details. So there's a fear of details, because I know that if I really look at it, I'll probably stay grounded, but I often avoid that. And then there can be a sense of being entered into the underworld through unbeknown to me. It can kind of just happen to me. So that relates to my Mercury in Sagittarius, who rules Virgo, who is squaring those asteroids I just mentioned, Persephone and Athena. So it really, I mean, what I was experiencing through a craniosacral therapy I had this week was that connection between the womb and the mouth and expressing. And, you know, for me, having a lot of planets in Scorpio in the deep sexual womb space, and then Virgo being that seed, like the seed of the womb, and then Mercury being in Sagittarius, express the truth. It seems all very interwoven with, can you express the truth from the shadow, from the under hidden space? Okay, can you expose your own enemies, whether they are mine or collective or shared? Yeah, so and then the last thing I was pondering then also was, you know, the question of what seeds have I planted karmically. So some of the shadow of communicating and bringing it out of the depths is, you know, what seeds did I plant in a previous incarnation, or do I connect to collectively? And, you know, the capacity to see my part in that, and not to be naively overlooking it actually, but to take responsibility, coming back to Saturn, that long-term responsibility and that trust and that groundedness. Yeah.
Okay, so the key words and that one that I just want to bring forward was like that the 12th house can be your karma, and karma can be like beneficial karma, and karma can also be like the balancing of the scales of needing to just, you know, create something because you destroyed something, And I use the example at Lolita Astrology of that maybe I love permaculture so much. Virgo is my 12th house also with my south node there, because I was part of the creation of some herbicide or Agent Orange itself, which is what's in my body that has destroyed my body because my father was in Vietnam. So that may be my karmic legacy, which actually becomes the gift that I am now giving. Okay, so sometimes that 12th house is like where your spiritual mastery really comes in and says, okay, I fucked up. Now I'm going to do something better. Okay, karma. Don't be afraid of karma. Although in 2017, I was studying with an ascension way shower, Sandra Walter, and she said karma was over and that it had ended in 2012. And that's how I kind of knew that I had like this, but probably is some kind of bizarre new age thing that is not true. So that's how I got from doing all of these videos that were like the higher octave of Saturn is that. It was because my consciousness had been kind of hijacked and I had to pay back by throwing all those videos away, threw them all away, and had to make all new videos because I had to quickly pay my karmic debt. Okay. All right. So go ahead. Who wants to jump in there?
I'll go. My 12th house is Taurus. I'm a Gemini rising. And so it's ruled by my, the ruler, domicile lord of Taurus is Venus, which I have Venus in the 8th house. So, so I have actually very strongly connected 12th and 8th house because the ruler of the 12th is in the 8th and they're in that 120-degree trine relationship. And I only have, well, it's not only, it's actually a kind of a pivotal point in my chart because I have Chiron in a grand earth kite. And it's one of the points in the grand earth kite, but it's connected with so many other planets in my chart. So even though I only have one planet in my 12th house, it is in essentially dialogue with just about every other planet in my chart. So, in fact, Lillian and I had kind of had a one-on-one discussion about this the other day about the demons of the 12th and how it you can get to the point of ceasing to fear the demons and learning how to kind of gain mastery over them. But in the interim, there may be a loss of control. And I think there have been many years where I have felt quite lost. With Taurus being of the material world, like the really kind of like the earthiness, and just sometimes Chiron feels orphaned because he's orphaned by Saturn. So my Chiron is in the 12th house, which is the joy of Saturn. And it often is like, I have accentuated feelings of abandonment or cast out, which doesn't quite make sense because I had a very loving childhood with my parents, until you really look deeply in my chart and you see that also trines the 4th house, which is the house of family and ancestry. And there's a lot of, and I have Saturn in the 4th house, also in a grand trine to Chiron in the 12th. So there's a lot of ancestral wounding that I am dealing with that comes through these connections, through my different lineages. And with Saturn in the 4th, it can be just like hardship and poverty in your ancestral line, and it's going right there to the 12th, which are my like unconscious fears, in this kind of abundant place of Taurus. So it really kind of manifests in me having fears and demons in my life around manifesting abundance, around manifesting good things in my life, around being able to enjoy things like pleasure and having good times with people, because I have this kind of accentuated, abandonment. And my Venus is kind of within the 8th house, is putting me through lessons of how do you master that and learn how to relate and be more integrated in society. So this place where, if you think about the 12th house as being that place of self-undoing, is one of my routes to being undone is when I get too caught up in my sense of abandonment. And I have to overcome that patterning of thinking, oh, I'm the black sheep. Oh, I'm so different. Oh, I just need to be a hermit and be in my little cave house studying my metaphysical stuff. And that's stuff that I have to work to integrate. Oh, I have to work super hard all the time and I can't get paid fairly for my value. These are all Venus things that I work hard through, because my 12th house is a house of Taurus and connected to these other things in my chart, which are why looking at your personal configurations are really important. But it's that idea of self-undoing. I just asked a friend of mine, he has five planets in the 12th. I just asked him if I could share some of that, and he has an Aries 12th house. He has Sun, Mercury, Venus. Just look at his chart quickly so I relate this correctly. He is Venus, Sun, Mercury, Chiron, and Pallas Athena. But just the Sun, Mercury, Venus there in Aries is a lot. But he's very fascinated with the demons of life, and his Sun there illuminates. He really can illuminate, and he in his Mercury there, he communicates very well about some of these 12th house struggles and self-undoing. And if he just said, it's fine. He actually has his own podcast, and he will very often talk about his own struggles publicly with addiction, with different things that he's had in his life. So even though he has gone through these very challenging demon things, his Sun there illuminates that, and he shares it. And in that way, he creates a lot of healing for other people, because they are no longer so trapped in their isolations because that 12th house feeling is, I'm all alone in my struggles. And one of the wonderful things about his Sun in the 12th house is, and he has an Aries 12th house, and his Sun is very close. The Sun in 1 is exalted in Aries, and 2, his Sun is very close to the degree that the Sun is most exalted. But he is just so brilliant at saying, these are my struggles. And I'm telling this because I know there's someone out there who needs it. And that is one of the beautiful things about Sun in the 12th house. So I'll stop there because I know other people have, some positive 12th house examples.
Well, let me just pull in the key words that the 12th house can be like your own self-undoing in terms of your health also. So you may use substances that ruin your health to meet your own demons. And then the road back between the 6th house, which is your health and healing and service to others, is what I hear in this example, is then he illuminates his health concerns, his own self-undoing, to help the other people heal with, the process of demons that he has experienced. So that's wonderful use of the 12th house. Yeah. Good. Who else wants to say something? Beth Ann, do you have something about the 12th?
Hi, yeah, I do. So I don't know too much about the 12th house. I'm still trying to absorb everything. But I have my Juno is conjunct Hathor in the 12th house, and I couldn't really understand it and how to go through it. But you said to me that could mean that your relationships are like fated. Like there's some karma there. Perhaps you've got some like collective unconscious work to do in relationships in that sacred marriage bed. And I really feel that. And my Gemini is there, and that's ruled by Mercury which is in Taurus in the 11th house. And like Emmeline was saying, it's like expressing that hidden, shadowy realm. And as it's in the 11th, I interpret that as I'm expressing that out globally in that way and kind of work. But that's also been really hard for me. It's like that's something that I've really got to like work on, and the same with the sacred marriage bed and bringing that to consciousness as it's not conjunct the ascendant. It's like that's something that is going to take a lot of like keep going, keep looking into as it's not there. But it's like, yeah, the 12th house is still very much a mystery to me, so it's really good to have this. But yeah, my Juno there is all I've got. But conjunct Hathor is quite personal, so yeah, it feels very like karmic, my relationships and bridging between the hidden realms and making that conscious. That's all I've got.
Good. The 12th house, according to something that Demetra is explaining, just look at the picture. She's using it in terms of the triple goddess. So on Lalita Astrology, I shared some of these pictures. Now, Demetra's work with like the feminine understanding of astrology was tremendous because she was working with a lot of shamans who were her best friends, and then also archaeologists who were digging up like the feminine ancient symbols that were coming up out of the ground during these years when Demetra was first writing these books, like The Dark Moon Goddess and Finding Our Way Through the Dark. So this book, Finding Our Way Through the Dark, uses the example of the triple goddess, and the 12th house, which you can see is dark, is the house of initiation, which I think is quite interesting also, because in the 12th house, if you think of it as like the demons, you know, the scary things that you will encounter within your own soul group, your own personal soul, your soul group, and then also the nation or the community that you live in, or the entire planet. Okay, so we're planet Earth. We are one big collective here. And I have been feeling more and more that we're in like the 12th house right now, all of us, the whole planet, whether, you know, it's your personal astrology, I feel the whole planet is in the 12th house. We're in this dark moon phase where we're being initiated to look at the deepest and the darkest of the unconscious and face our own personal demons and face our collective demons. Now, the most secretive place that I can think of in the 12th house, which would be Scorpio. If you had Scorpio in the 12th house, that is like the hidden of the hidden. So I've been pushing buttons big time because that's what I'm good at, by confronting the United States birth chart with Scorpio in the 12th house. And like the deep hidden secrets around the United States, I've been pushing buttons on that pretty big time. Now in the United States chart, the ruler of the 12th house is found in the 7th house in Gemini, making this kind of like play back and forth Gemini kind of like duality thing of, no, it's you, no, it's you, let's argue, you know, let's like fight, let's duke it out. And we get really, particularly in the United States at this time of year, we get really like, okay, it's my candidate. Oh yeah, I'm a, you know, and we can like argue really bad, but that's because we're in the United States being ruled by a natal chart that has Scorpio 12th house, totally hidden deep in the unconscious. Nobody knows why we're arguing because nobody likes any of these candidates anyways. None of these candidates represent us, but we're gonna argue about them. Like, I would not have any of them over for dinner. They're not my friends. But we're gonna argue about them. That is totally the United States natal chart, because it has Scorpio 12th house and its ruler Mars is in the 7th in Gemini. Let's like create controlled opposition. So I've been pointing that out, and now I might be totally wrong. Please don't ever believe me. But from an astrological perspective, that's what I see. Like, let's duke it out over two candidates that nobody even likes, but make it a fear-based 12th house. What are you most afraid of? Is the other demon winning? So vote for this demon. it's absolutely hysterical. But that is the way I see charts, and that's the way you can see your own chart too, is like, what's in your 12th house? What is it that's actually driving you, like from the 12th house, that's actually driving the life? But it is unconscious. Make it conscious. And that is where you face your demons and you evolve, because all of these demons are just keepers of a gate, a threshold. Face the scariest damn thing that you can imagine, like that we've never had a real vote, that the vote has always been controlled opposition, and that Donald Trump, when he said it, and I predicted it, I said, we're going to have a Mars-Saturn square, we're going to have the duking it out, and he basically said in the first debate, we don't have fair elections. They're all cheating. Like, you can manipulate them. And I was like, he just said it. Fabulous. So the 12th house is where we as a planet are right now, going to look into the deep unconscious and unravel, how did we get where we are, and what seed do we have to plant to move forward at this point? Because, as Daniel keeps saying, and I wish that Daniel was on today, one of the karmic things that we've got coming really soon, and someone sent me private stuff in Messenger, that they keep dreaming of nuclear winter. And if we don't change up the way we do energy, we're going to have karmic seeds of that potential. And so the more that we talk about that, like, really scariest thing that nobody wants to talk about, that is like nuclear reactors. What is everyone really terrified of? Nuclear reactors. All right, go ahead.
I have something I'd just like to add about the Daniel was talking to me about this concept that he was meditating on, and it was interesting. He was tying together a little bit about Demeter, Ceres, Demeter, and Persephone, in the sense that because Persephone is under the and in underground, and Demeter is on the overground, and she is mourning, so then it becomes completely sparse of all the vegetation, right? So everything is dead. And he was postulating whether if Persephone can claim her throne as overlording in a way all of the enemies, and standing in her sovereignty in the underworld, and dealing with her fear of power, because I guess you know, is that fear of power and manipulation of the underworld, because power corrupts. But what if power can become something like a pure essence to it, if we can work through it and bring these things to light, to consciousness? So there was some element there that he was considering, that he was just talking to me about through Messenger about that. So could be a link there to do with the shadow and the undoing of that, which involves a deep stepping into dealing with our own fears of all of this, like fear of the controversy, conspiracy theories and all these different things, but having to really own it for ourselves and stand in that, which has been really sobering as I've been contemplating that, and my own fears of that. And I just wanted to say that I watched the trailer for June last night, because Holly was mentioning the film June coming out at the end of this year. And something we noticed was that they didn't actually mention in the trailer anything to do with ecology, because in the book there's a huge preoccupation with trying to create like a water source for the plants so that they can grow, because they have so little water. It's all about conserving water. And they try to conserve the plants and grow them in some kind of way, but they're never going to do it in their own. It's like 7+ generations down the line, maybe it will work. So that reminded me of this whole native earth-based consciousness of the 7 generations and so on. I was just thinking about the Aquarius age and nuclear kind of stuff, and then whether, I don't know, maybe this is just another topic, but whether the Aquarian age is a step towards green Capricorn. Maybe it takes like a long time to get there. Maybe we have to go through a complete desert phase before, in some way, metaphorically or whatever, to get there. Maybe it's a long journey. Yeah.
I have a few things to say about that too, just to piggyback. You know, I feel like my little studies into some Eastern philosophies, and the Tibetan in particular, they really have a great, they kind of have a corner on the market in terms of the dark in death, and sort of embracing that. I really like a lot of the teachings that come out of there, out of the Tibetan ancient knowledge. And, you know, from what I understand, you know, in traditional temples, they're all like the image Lalita put up of, that monster has a particular name, which I can't think of, but, you know, in temples, they have all these horrifying monster faces. Even on the Notre Dame, they have all these gargoyles. What are gargoyles? But I heard a talk once where, you know, the idea is not to leave your fear behind, but to bring it with you into the sanctuary, to bring everything with you into the sanctuary. And I think that, at least in my experience, you know, in meditation or getting quiet and having to confront the self, having to look at the stillness, having to confront the fear that comes with stillness or darkness or whatever that looks like for you, is to bring and face the demons head on. And to me, that seems like the penultimate teaching of the 12th house. And so, yeah, I just wanted to correlate that with those Tibetan or Eastern teachings. I'm sure there's a teaching in every religious tradition, I'm sure, about that kind of dark space contemplation and sitting with your demons in some way, at least in the mystical traditions, or the more esoteric contemplative traditions in each religion. So yeah, it's from embracing and bringing with you the demons and owning them as your own, which Lalita has been doing so beautifully on social media, saying, what can you own? How can you claim this is not a projection of the self, but as one part of you? And I think that there's great power and great strength in that, personally. And yeah, that's what I had to say.
So let's just honor Vajra Kilaya. And I know Vajra means the thunderbolt. I'm putting together some Sanskrit because I know Sanskrit better, but I don't know if this word predates Tibetan language, but Kilaya, I'm not sure what Kilaya. I know some of our watchers are Tantric Buddhist practitioners, so if John and Karen can let me know what this deity is. One of the books that I have on the Rainbow Bridge, which is a fabulous Tantric Buddhist perspective, is that unless you meet these demons, there is no way you can ascend into the rainbow body, that the demons are the keepers of the gate. So if you're meeting your scariest, really most terrifying everything, like you've come into a crisis spot, you will meet your shadow, because the moment that she gets tortured, she's going to come out. So that's how you know that there's like ready material to meet your shadow, because where your trauma is, where your demons lie, are your own trauma. And so you'll be confronted with that and you'll meet your shadow. If people aren't sure how to figure out your shadow, we did a video last summer called Articulating the Shadow. Go ahead and watch that. It was like by sign, by within your nation, stuff like that. Johnny, you want to say something about your 12th house? You have Sun in the 12th house.
We were talking about the 12th house the other day. We were talking about apparently part of it is unseen enemies. You were talking about demons or something. And in part of mystical Christianity, they have the concept of like familiar spirits, which is like beings that will sit in your mind, or like on the kind of transient border between the subconscious and the conscious. And they'll like speak. I guess the idea is that if you have personal sovereignty, or if you have complete sovereignty, then they can't like enact things upon you. So it has to convince you to agree with it. So they'll speak as if it's your thoughts. So I guess when you have events in life and you will hear voices, or you will say to yourself like, but we perceive it as our own thoughts. So we might say like, oh, I'm not good enough for this, or I failed this, or I always mess up, or this is too scary, I can't handle this. And they kind of echo those things, and then they get you to agree with them. So it starts to develop this narrative in yourself that agrees with these beings that that want to like diminish your sovereignty and your capacity to enact your will in the world. And so it's like a process you can go through, or like an ongoing process, I guess, of like understanding that those voices aren't necessarily yours, but then it can also be useful because you can identify where those voices are and then change the script and be like, oh, okay, actually, I do believe I can do this, or I don't have to believe that I'm rubbish at X, Y, Z, or whatever the fear or something is. I guess quite a common one might be like false humility. So people say, I'm not deserving of this, or someone does this better than me. So, or like imposter syndrome at work is quite a common thing that people get, which you could perhaps trace back to those kind of like these like voices that try and convince you of a certain narrative. That's quite dark. Now I felt like I had an experience the other day where I was thinking about some of these relating to work, and I felt like I had a conversation with a being where I was saying to it, it was like a friendly one, saying, can you like help me out with like the workload of these different voices, or like these different narratives I have, like reversing the and perhaps like get rid of some of these voices coming in. And I felt like the being was saying that's not a good idea, because as annoying as they are, they're like really helpful for the process of building your own, establishing your personal sovereignty, I guess. Because if you're devoid of them, then I guess you lack, it doesn't build in you that maturity to be able to like develop your own personal narrative that's positive or that's like self-empowering. Whereas if they're around, then over time you can like that grating against that narrative, or those voices that say that you're not enough, that develops in you a maturity, I guess, if you overcome those to do whatever. It's
Yeah,
like
they're still there. They're still there, but they don't own you anymore.
Yeah, it's like you move beyond that, but they're still there. They can be. It's like a teacher in a way. There's a song we like that talks about your enemies being your greatest teachers. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
Also,
Damn, straight from the 12th house source people. Like, damn, that was it, Johnny. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Have a good call.
Yeah, so that's really important. That helped me tremendously, because I have some clients with ruler of this ascendant in the 12th house. There's a couple of clients that I'm working with right now. So please, my friends who I'm working with you, that 12th house is the kind of self-doubt and those other voices that negate your personal authority, what I call the wetico, okay? And they're in there talking, saying, you're a piece of shit, you're not real, you're an imposter, you're not deserving of this, what are you doing here, you're not good enough. Britt knows that is the cutter, right? We've worked on this with the 8th house too. So my friends, my clients who have those big luminaries in the 12th house, like Johnny does, instead of fighting with those voices, see them as the controlled opposition. See them as the other candidate who's pointing out the other thing. And instead of hating them or negating them, just being like, that's a point of view. Yes, but I'm not that. Go ahead, folks.
That's the thing with the luminary in the 12th house, then you identify with that. And the biggest challenge in the life then is to recognize that your identity, that's not the totality of your identity. That, like, in meditation, the challenge is to allow the thoughts to just pass. That's the thing, is when you have a luminary there, then you think it sticks, like this must be the truth, but it's just a passing. That's the brilliance, I think, of the Eastern teachings, is that it's passing. It is, and to welcome it as is just the wave that's passing over you. The full embracing of it, making friends with it, and recognizing it as a transiting moment, rather than one that is so that is the totality of who you are. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so I'll also speak about timings of the 12th house. So that watch your 12th house, know the sign, and then watch the timings of when the sun comes into your 12th house. So you may get those moments like Johnny has all the time, every day, where the sun illuminates your 12th house and you suddenly get this other information. There's also the timing of like if I think about my own mother's 12th house, where there's a Venus retrograde through your 12th house, and you get to meet the dark sister Ereshkigal, and she's truly terrifying, and you're hung on a meat hook. That can happen. And then there's also like people who have a big 12th house and are like, I have no idea, nothing has ever happened to me. Don't worry. It's coming. My mom was not really able to start unpacking her 12th house until she was 65 years old. And now she is really unpacking her 12th house. She met her older sister who was born before her. The darkness of the womb. When we did Ancestry.com, we found out that my grandma had a baby before my mom, which made my mom's 12th house. Of all the deep, dark secrets of the womb, then went into the terrors that my grandmother had when she gave or got pregnant with and gave birth to my mom. But she had no idea where were all these womb terrors coming from. She couldn't figure it out. And then at 71 years old, 72 years old, she finds out that her mother was in one of those Catholic Magdalene laundries, carrying her older sister who she had to give up forcibly. Some really dark shit in the womb. And then my mother got that because she was the next one through the womb. And she could never figure out, what is all this terror? What is this? So we're unpacking it. And sometimes you get the opportunity when you're 71 to really unpack that shit. Demetra also said that by sign, the 12th house, if it's an air sign, you're healing the mind, like the demons of the mind. If you're earth sign, 12th house, you're healing the body. If you're fire sign, you're healing the spirit. If it's water sign in the 12th, you're healing emotions. And the more that we as astrologers can use that, I'm finding that application is really correct. And if I say that to my client, it gives them a little bit more like, what is my 12th house about? So start, please, if you're an astrologer, using that with your clients. Okay, go ahead. Who wants to talk about the 12th house?
I've been thinking about it as the along the same lines where it is, one of the ancient Greek names for the 12th house is the house of the bad spirit, which we've kind of talked at length about, but it's also adjacent to the 11th house, which is the house of the good spirit. So I've been thinking about how if you're traveling as from the ascendant through the 12th house, you have to go through that stuff to get to the kind of the better place of the 11th house. And if you're going in the other way, in zodiacal order, if you travel through that kind of 11th house of like friends, and you have to be a bit cognizant of what you do there, because the ramifications will maybe come in the next house. And then I've been thinking about how, if you're just looking at it from the point of view of the 12th house, it's not configured to the first, but it is to the second, the third, the fourth. It's not configured to the fifth. It's in opposition to the sixth. It's not configured to the seventh, but it is to the eighth. And so it's just like working out in my mind, those houses that we often think of as good houses, particularly like the fifth is the joy of Venus, and are not visible to the 12th. And it was just working through how those arrangements are, to really enjoy like that fifth house, you have to really kind of disconnect from the 12th house. And to be in that place of bodily joy in the 5th, which is the joy of Venus, you can't be hung up on your mental inner dialogue with your demons. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody else, but it's kind of like getting that mastery over that part of the mind, and the subconscious in the realm of spirit can help you more fully enjoy that kind of physical expression. So I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but that was just like, as I've been listening, what I've been coming through. And then I just wanted to jump back to the nuclear winter bit. And, you know, because I've been on a farm a long time, and then, you know, we do think of barren, I think has a negative connotation, and I am not wishing for a nuclear winter, but oftentimes we would keep a garden space barren for a year or two to let it rejuvenate. You know, my dad would call it letting the field go fallow. And this idea of like letting the land rest as a way of respecting the land. And I think that kind of is like letting Demeter Ceres have her time to grieve, releasing Persephone. And then when Persephone comes back, she has a newer relationship with Persephone, because once Persephone can come above ground and re-enter the realm of the living, she's not quite the same, and she's now actually in some way the queen of the underworld, but she can come and bring the springtime back, but she's not quite the same. But there's until that you get that at least partial return, you can't really appreciate. It adds a greater appreciation to what you thought you lost. You've gotten a little bit back. You don't have everything back, because it's not the way it was ever again. But that time to reflect and let things go fallow helps build that appreciation for the sacredness of the return. And I think that's part of that value of that kind of 12th house time. It's that time of like getting quiet and allowing yourself to really feel into that. So.
Okay, well, so the shadow, to integrate the shadow. So just picking up that, and so Holly and Emmeline were talking about Persephone and kind of integrating that shadow stuff. So in this book, Demetra gives like all the dark goddess asteroids and how to find your way to your shadow, because they're right. You know, it's like if you can't integrate your shadow, then romance and dancing with the shadow, which is 5th house stuff like creativity and sexuality, if you have not integrated your shadow, you're still projecting it onto your partner so that your love life sucks. So that's, I mean, Claude and I did that process really well, and Demetra was with us during that process. You know, like everything that was my trauma from my childhood is what Claude is. Everything. You know, death, because he's got this huge stellium in the 8th house of death, or the early death of my father, scary stepfather, you know, really bad temper, transient character who's like living out of the dumpster, like everything that was my demon, he brought it out for me, and I had to learn my shadow, which is the fiendess. So once I really got with her and knew her really well, because Claude pressed every button that there was, then you're dancing with your shadow. You've integrated that part that you find repulsive and you're ashamed of, and oh God, no, I can't be that gross thing. And then your romance, your 11th house of good spirits and good public reputation and patrons, and all of that stuff works. Also, because the 8th, the 4th, and the 12th make a grand trine, the 4th is like your home, your ancestry, your ancestors, your physical property. Like your physical property does not work unless you've done your 12th house shit, okay? And that's why my physical property is just unbelievable, because Claude and I have done major 8th house, 12th house stuff. So my 4th house home is amazing. That's how we got there. Go ahead, folks.
Yeah, can I jump in? I just thought of something when you were talking about the initiation and how the symbol you showed with that part. It reminded me of like back when people in certain ancient cultures, they would like go into those dark places of the tomb, and they would have the door rolled over, and it would be like that dark cave womb like returning experience. And that's kind of what I've realized the 12th house is what we've been talking about. It's like, yeah, going into that initiation chamber, facing all your demons and doubts and fears and shadow, and then when you've realized it and you've integrated it, coming out into the first again and being reborn. Like they would go into these initiation chambers, and then they would come out when the sun rose on the equinox or something, and then see the rising again. That's what I just a thought that came up with that. Yeah, and I feel like my Juno being there, it's like that's like you saying with Claude, poking all your wounds from your mine's the same. It's like my partner is like that. My fears, it's like that. It brings up my fears, and my shadow side is like reflected in my Juno, and that's my unconscious deep work and my initiation, my like deep womb, cave, dark depth experience. So that was just something that came to mind.
Yeah, I thought I'd share my piece about that karmic spouse thing as well. That for me, what is mirrored in our relationship is my capacity, also because Johnny illuminates the 12th house for me with Jupiter conjunct his sun. So it's like I just have to go into exile there. And it's a very protective, I think with Jupiter there, it's very protective as well. So it does feel like the boons of going into the underworld, that support to do that. But yeah, also very much as I have a fear of going there, and what it would mean to let go and to like go down. Whilst I have a passion and a drive because of the Scorpio zest, there's also a real fear of that, and it could make me become quite controlling. So I can find myself wanting to control little details, like Virgo details, little things, just if I could just hold these little lines. And I'm conscious of it, and it's like a little thing every time of like releasing that web of the matrix every time, but it's illuminated completely, so it's a sense of feeling quite naked, but quite protected to allowing the shadow to be unveiled. It just there's a control that wants to keep the shadow pushed down. And for me in our relationship, it's allowing that to come through, and that there's actually nothing wrong with that anyway. It's not a bad thing. Oh yeah, and there was one other thing, that we were talking about the body parts and how the 12th house can relate to the different, depending on your zodiac sign. For me in Virgo, I think it's the lower intestines. Is that right? So that could be connected to the digestion. And if I'm not able to process, if I have like a lot going on, trauma experiences or things coming to the surface, like I am at the moment feeling a lot of things, I can tend to feel quite constipated and really bloated, and I just can't digest food. So that's a really good sign of my body in Virgo. Like the earthy body really keeps a score, and it's really sentient and able to show me, you know, this is what's going on. So I really need to pay a lot of attention to my body. With a Libra ascendant, I just want to like fly over here, but I need to like stay in my body and bring the flow of emotion through as well. Okay.
That really brings up some of the coping mechanisms of, yeah, again, the signs and dealing with that. Because I would say for Aquarius there, I would say that that if I get freaked out about something, distance is then what I create to, you know, how Aquarius can be distant or aloof, remote. I don't know how it relates to the physical body. But yeah, so coping mechanisms again. And again, it's a great sign. It's a great light bulb that goes off when you recognize your coping mechanism. And I guess my approach wouldn't be to necessarily change it, but just to really look at it, just to look at it. Because, you know, so much of my life has been about wanting to be different, to change myself, to not accept who I am, but just always wanting something else, something different. So yeah, that's just what came up for me.
Okay, Aquarius is the nervous system. So I'm thinking about Carl Jung, and during the years that Freud and Carl Jung were kind of on the scene with depth psychology. And Freud, and now some of my psychology majors need to help me with this, and maybe Daniel can work on this, but Freud would not fully reveal himself as a madman, as possibly crazy, because he needed to keep a certain academic standing and keep his clientele and his professorship, okay? Whereas Jung took several years off to be absolutely alone, removed himself, and declared himself possibly crazy. He actually said, I may be insane, so I'm not going to take clients right now. And during that time, he made that massive book of dream mandalas, like massive symbology. And so Jung's gift in the collective unconscious was that he allowed the demons to take him over, actually, and be like in an incarceration of his own madness. And then out came this deep symbology for the collective, which was his gift. And I think Emmeline was kind of alluding to this a little bit with, you know, she and Johnny, like, can you really not hold on to any strings of your persona, of your first house personality, of like the character mask that you wear? And can you be full on mad, like crazy batshit stuff, like not grounded in any way? And that is kind of how you get into the 12th house. So Demetra gives some examples of like, how do you get there? What do you do? Some people use psychedelics and they fry themselves completely, you know, and they're mad, they're crazy. And Some people do ecstatic dance or trance drumming, like repetitive drumming, until you get into an altered state, which is kind of 8th house too, but 12th house access. And then Beth Ann was talking about, like, you know, putting yourself in a cave and rolling that rock over. And a lot of masters have done that. Obviously, Yeshua was in a cave, and then allegedly, you know, his mythology is that he gave birth to himself again after being in this cave. But lots of mystics do that path. My guru, Neem Karoli Baba, put himself in a lake for 3 months with the water up to his chin, and he stayed in the lake. He would not come out of the lake. And he went mad. And he passed through the madness to enlightenment. So another way that the 12th house has been interpreted is that once you get through that, you can actually reach some real spiritual truth. Amritanandamayi Ma, Amma, the hugging saint, I've done her chart, and I know Amma too. I've been with her in satsang. She buried herself in sand with just her face sticking out. And she buried herself and refused to eat and refused anything to be buried unless Mahakali came to her. So she wanted Mahakali, who's really scary, to come to her, and she wouldn't settle. She was going to die if Mahakali didn't come. And the stories are that eagles, sea eagles, would drop fish into her mouth, which she would only eat if a sea eagle dropped a fish into her mouth. So that's pretty mad. Like, that's crazy. And she has a big stellium in the 12th house in Virgo. So she had to go like really into that demons and scary stuff. So if the demons come to you, I've had some clients right now who, like, you know, they love Kali, but they're afraid of Kali. You know, Kali's kind of like the devil. We don't invoke Kali. It's too scary. But they want to invoke Kali. And when Kali comes, because she's come for me a couple of times, she is damn scary. Like, she's growling. Like, when she came to me, it was like growling, right? Really terrifying. But that is also my spirit guide and my angel, like Mahakala, like full on. That is who I love. Because Lord Shiva and Kali and some of the things that I was talking to Holly about, they're like the most scary, but they're also the Lord Shiva is the Lord of the ghouls. Lord Shiva is the Lord of like all of that dead, scary stuff, but that's what leads you through to enlightenment. Lord Shiva is also then destroying anything that you're truly afraid of to show you the larger reality. So let's see if anyone wants to jump in on that, you know, like meeting your demons.
Well, I have a few thoughts on that. It does make me think about the guru experience and how a teacher can, quote unquote, mislead you into giving away all your money or being a sexual deviant or whatever it is that they lead you into. And sort of the idea that that is ultimately, you know, don't judge it. That person has to go through that experience in order to reach their enlightenment or whatever. Or the other teaching, which is, you know, don't pity the alcoholic or the drug addict who's lying there in the city street, because they're having their own experience. They're having their the experience that they need to lead them into a revelation or an insight or that spark that will break them through, or whatever it is, their karma. Don't interfere with that. At least this is my rudimentary impression of those kinds of teachings. The teachings of mystics, of going into that dark space, and that it's scary stuff, that you want to be scared. I don't know, I have gone through a guru experience, been there, done that. And it's like, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The lessons were extremely powerful and ultimately leading me to my own sovereignty. So I think that that's ultimately the purpose, is for these dark journeys, these initiations of great terror that lead you to a surrendering place. I think that's another word, the surrender piece, which might be another key word for the 12th house, the ultimate and complete surrender. That might be too old school or like modern, with the association of Pisces there on the 12th house, which I don't want to do. Yeah, so it just made me think of the guru experience and the surrender and mystical teachings of the Gnostic awakening. And now that's what I got to say.
Well, that brings us to an important point around Holly's really clear gifts to the group around that. If you're doing astrology from the idea that Cancer is actually the natural mother place of the first house because the moon is closest to the earth, and that Leo is actually the natural second house because that is the second closest object to the earth, and so forth. And then it actually configures quite beautifully with Virgo being the third house, but actually Gemini being the 12th house. So then Mercury is the third closest object to the earth, and so forth. So if you're working with that ancient concept of what natural sign rules which of the houses, Holly had said that Gemini ruling or being the sign that is associated with the 12th house is ruled by Mercury, but it's like getting over duality. And Saturn's joy there is the firm, necessary discipline to do so. That's the way I would read that, is that, Saturn offers enough like hardships. Maybe like being the drug addict in the street is the hardship that you need to do to like get over duality. And then on the other side of that, the hardship for us is to, for instance, see, children having a hard time, elderly people having a hard time, elderly people being in nursing homes and not being able to see their family, really difficult right now. A lot of tears, a lot of sadness around that. And yet that may be the initiation we're going through right now. That may be the initiation that humanity is in to get over duality finally, is to like face the worst fear. And your soul said, yes, I'm going to be a 70-year-old with dementia in an elder care setting and not being able to see my family and not know who the heck I am. And that's really hard for the rest of us, but that soul may have chosen that. It's also very hard for us to see a child abduction or whatever taken out of the foster care system and sold in human trafficking, which is quite commonly known at this point. But, from an astrological perspective, I'm pretty sure I could find it in the chart that is what that child chose as an initiation. And where we are as humanity is in the ultimate place right now of like looking at that stuff going, whoa, that's some dark shit right there. And yet getting out of the duality around the fact that that soul may have chosen that experience. So Gemini ruling that 12th house is the ultimate initiation of knowing that the soul either fated, needed that experience, or chose that experience to evolve. Anybody want to talk about that? Make that clearer? Go ahead.
Well, I just have something to add. In terms of, when we see things like that, I was listening to someone talk about reacting to seeing the darkness and seeing the injustice. And like my immediate response, and has been in the past, is to go out and join a charitable organization. I joined one for human trafficking because I was so moved by it. I just had to act out. But I think also there's the element into which, because I had a wound there, some kind of a karmic connection to it, that spurred me to react. And it's this kind of funky relationship with acting out of woundedness. Does that really help in an outward action at this point? Is perhaps needed a little later down the line, after which we've done our own internal kind of psychic healing, which feels helpless in a way. And then you meet the inner enemies which say, this isn't worth your time, this isn't helping anyone, people are still being trafficked right now. And you think, oh, yeah, but then you can meet all of those demons that you see attacking other people, attacking yourself internally, plus then you can see yourself doing that to other people internally, and then it just gets really weird. And then it's like there is no duality, because you're the persecutor as well. And that's just really weird. But I think good, because that develops compassion hugely for both sides. So that's been something I've been musing on.
That's super hard, Emmeline. So if I take away someone's chosen victimhood, I am a perpetrator. That's gonna be way out there, folks. If I go to the senior center and pick up somebody's elder who has terrible dementia and bring her here to my house, I'm an archon. I've just taken away somebody's free will. And there's a whole lot of light workers and do-gooders and people who call themselves the light and love people. I'll give you an example in animals, so it's more clear. Because I've grown up very farmy, like I know about animals. So you go and you pick up the chickens that the local elementary school hatched. You get all those chickens, and 17 of them are roosters. But you're a vegan, love and light person. You bring all those damn roosters home with your 4 hens, and the roosters start beating each other up and bloodying each other and humping the hens within an inch of their little bloody tail life. And one of my clients just did this session with me, okay? So she knows she is out there. And I'm like, now you who just trying to get, save your mentality, Messiah gonna save these chickens, have become a perpetrator. You're now part of the system. And there is a really whoa process in that, which is, where is the line? Because the roosters are now, doing cockfights in your backyard, but you saved them. You rescued the roosters. And then, you know, they all get eaten by a fish or cat anyway, so it didn't matter. Because that was their destiny. That was their fate. I think I'll have to close with that weird one. Anyone have any final thoughts on the 12th house? Get out of duality.
Well, I think just to do that, because I think you're referencing the victim perpetrator rescuer cycle, and it has a fancy clinical name, but that may be the ultimate goal of the 12th house, is to learn how to flip that into a healthier dynamic. So, and in, you know, we were referencing the theme of Monday, which is that kind of archetypal chart with Gemini and the 12th house. So the domicile lord of the 12th would be mischievous mercurial Mercury, who likes to be the ultimate trickster god, and it's coming to terms with that trickster phenomenon and how to maintain integrity in all your experiences here, so that you are not playing that trickster game anymore, and releasing that dynamic. So it's perhaps the hardest but most important work that we do, is dealing with our 12th house. Essentially shit. But I recently read something from like some ancient Greek thing, like the golden ass or something like that, some like famous ancient Greek play in the magical donkey poops gold, you know. But there is the gold in the manure. And certainly if we you know, are being resourceful folks, that we look and we go through that to really find what the gold is. Sometimes, you know, not the physical gold, but the spiritual gold. And, you know, these 12th and 8th house places are places where we can, you know, may have to do some hunting, but you can find that spiritual gold if you want to take that journey or talk to those demons and face your inner Kali. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, beautiful. Face your demons on the inside so that they're not projecting on the outside. Okay, everybody? If you need assistance with that, let us know. All right, so bye-bye for now.